"Ma'am, I need to call my manager." The lottery clerk's hands were shaking as she scanned the ticket again. Her eyes kept darting from the screen to my face, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Is everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. She swallowed hard. "This ticket, it's worth $50 million. $50 million. My husband, David, had been counting down the days until he could claim this ticket. He'd hidden it in his desk drawer, planning his big escape, planning to finally leave me for the family I wasn't supposed to know about. The wife he'd married 8 years ago, the 2 kids who called him Dad, the whole perfect life he'd built in a house across town while I waited for him at home like an idiot. But here's what David didn't know. I'd found out about everything 3 weeks ago. The second wife, the children, every single lie he'd told me for 10 years. And I'd already claimed his winning ticket in my name, completely legally, before he even realized he'd won. The manager was walking over now, paperwork in hand, ready to transfer $50 million into my account. David thought this lottery ticket was his golden ticket to freedom. He had no idea it was about to become the most expensive mistake of his life. My name is Sarah, and this is how I made my cheating husband pay for his double life. Let me take you back to the beginning so you understand how perfect everything seemed. David and I met when I was 23. I was working as a graphic designer, he was an architect, and we met at a mutual friend's wedding. He was charming, funny, and he pursued me like I was the only woman in the world. We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. We bought a house in the suburbs with a white picket fence. I know how cliché that sounds, but it was genuinely my dream. For the first few years, everything was amazing. He'd leave little notes in my lunch bag. We'd cook dinner together on weekends. We talked about having kids someday, maybe 2 or 3. Then his career took off. Bigger projects, more responsibilities, lots of travel. "Babe, I've got a site visit in Denver this weekend. Client meeting in Seattle, I'll be back Thursday. Big presentation in Phoenix, might need to stay an extra day." I was proud of him, my successful husband, building his career, providing for our future. I never questioned it. Why would I? Sure, there were little things that seemed weird if I thought about them too hard, like how he never wanted me to visit his downtown office. "It's boring, Sarah, just blueprints and stressed-out contractors. Let's meet at that cafe you love instead." Or how he'd suddenly step outside to take certain phone calls. Work stuff, you'd be bored to tears. Or that separate credit card statement that went to a P.O. box. Business expenses makes taxes easier. Every excuse was reasonable. Every explanation made sense. I trusted him because we'd been together for 12 years, because he still kissed me goodbye every morning, because our life together felt real. God, I was so stupid. The cracks started showing on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was doing laundry. His fault, really, because he always left stuff in his pockets. Receipts, business cards, loose change. This time, I pulled out a crumpled receipt from a children's clothing store, Target. 2 items, 1 girl's dress, size 6, and 1 boy's hoodie, size 8. I stood there in our laundry room, staring at that receipt, feeling my stomach drop. We didn't have kids. We'd been trying on and off for years, but it hadn't happened yet, and we didn't have nieces or nephews those ages. David was an only child, and my siblings' kids were all teenagers. So who were these clothes for? When David came home that night, I asked him about it. Casual, like it was no big deal. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Oh yeah, my coworker Jim's kids had a birthday party. I grabbed some gifts during lunch." Perfect answer. Totally reasonable. Except David had never mentioned anyone named Jim before, and in 12 years of marriage, he'd never once bought gifts for coworkers' kids. That receipt sat in my purse for 2 weeks. I kept taking it out, looking at it, telling myself I was being paranoid. 12 years of marriage should mean something, right? I should trust my husband. But I couldn't shake this sick feeling in my stomach. Something was very, very wrong. 3 weeks after I found that receipt, David's phone rang while he was in the shower. I wasn't planning to look. I swear, I wasn't that kind of wife who snooped through phones. But the screen lit up on the bathroom counter, and I saw the caller ID. Madison. Heart. Madison with a heart emoji. My husband didn't know anyone named Madison. At least, he'd never mentioned anyone named Madison in 12 years. My hands were shaking as I picked up his phone. I knew his passcode. It was our anniversary, and I opened his messages before I could talk myself out of it. The thread with Madison went back years, not months, years. I scrolled through hundreds of messages, grocery lists, reminders about parent-teacher conferences. Don't forget Emma has soccer practice at 4. Jake needs his permission slip signed. Can you pick up milk on your way home? Home. She was talking about their home, their kids. There were photos, so many photos. A little girl with dark curly hair, maybe 7 or 8 years old. A boy who looked around 10 with David's exact smile. Birthday parties, school plays, family dinners at a dining table I'd never seen. And David was in these photos, not just in the background. He was front and center, holding the little girl on his shoulders, teaching the boy how to throw a football, kissing Madison's cheek while they stood in front of a Christmas tree. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I scrolled back further, my vision blurring with tears. There were messages from our last anniversary, the night David had taken me to that expensive Italian restaurant and told me I was the love of his life. That same night, he'd texted Madison, "Stuck at the office late tonight. Tell the kids I'm sorry, I'll make it up to them this weekend." The office. He called our marriage the office, like I was just some obligation he had to deal with before going home to his real family. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw his phone against the wall. I wanted to storm into that bathroom and demand answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the part of my brain that knew I needed proof, not just emotions. Maybe it was survival instinct kicking in. So I took photos of everything, every message, every picture, every casual mention of our house and our kids and love you babe. Then I Googled her name, Madison Chen, Facebook profile, Instagram, everything public. And there it was, right in her bio, married to David Morrison, mom to Emma and Jake, living our best life. David Morrison, my David Morrison. Her profile was full of family photos going back almost a decade. David at a beach I'd never been to, building sandcastles with the kids. David in a World's Best Dad t-shirt at what looked like a school fundraiser. David and Madison kissing at a restaurant, celebrating their 8th anniversary. 8 years. He'd been married to her, or at least living as her husband, for 8 years, while being legally married to me for 12. The math made me sick. He'd started this second family 4 years into our marriage, while we were still trying to have kids, while I was believing every business trip, every late night at the office, every excuse. I sat on our bathroom floor, phone in my hand, and cried silently while my husband showered 10 feet away. But even then, even with all this evidence, part of me still needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to see this other family, this other life, this other version of my husband. So I made a plan. 2 weeks later, David told me he had a business trip to Portland. 4 days, some big commercial project. He'd be staying at a Marriott near the construction site. He even showed me the hotel confirmation email. He was that good at lying. But I'd been preparing. I'd installed a phone tracking app, one of those family locator things that parents use for teenagers. I'd put it on his phone while he was sleeping, hidden in a folder he never opened. Friday morning, he kissed me goodbye, threw his suitcase in the car, and drove off toward the highway. I watched his location on my phone. He didn't go toward the airport. He didn't even go toward the highway. He drove across town to a neighborhood I'd never been to, a quiet suburban area with good schools and parks. And then his location stopped moving. I waited 1 hour. Then I got in my car and followed the pin on my phone. The house was on a tree-lined street called Maple Avenue, 2-story colonial, painted light blue with white trim. There was a basketball hoop in the driveway, a swing set in the backyard, and a minivan with a "My kid is an honor student" bumper sticker. And there was David's car, parked in the driveway like he lived there, because he did live there. I parked down the street, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to march up to that front door and blow up his entire world, but I just sat there, watching. 20 minutes later, the front door opened. 2 kids ran out. The girl from the photos, Emma, wearing a pink jacket and light-up sneakers. The boy, Jake, chasing after her with a football. They were laughing, playing, being normal kids. And then David came out, my husband, wearing jeans and a hoodie I'd bought him for his birthday, calling after the kids to be careful, smiling that smile I thought was only for me. "Emma, not too close to the street. Jake, gentle with your sister." He sounded like a dad, like he'd been doing this for years, which, of course, he had. Then Madison appeared in the doorway. She was beautiful, younger than me, probably early 30s, with long dark hair and this easy, confident way of moving. She said something I couldn't hear, and David turned around. He walked over to her and kissed her. Not a quick peck, a real kiss, the kind that says, "I'm home where I belong." I felt something break inside my chest. Jake shouted, "Dad, Dad, watch this!" And David turned, his whole face lighting up as the boy did a cartwheel on the grass. "That's amazing, buddy. You've been practicing." Dad. That word hit me like a punch to the stomach. I'd spent 12 years with this man, 12 years of being his wife, of planning our future, of trying to start a family. And here he was, already living that life, with someone else, with their kids, in their house. While I was what? The placeholder? The backup plan? I drove home in a complete daze, barely seeing the road through my tears. But by the time I pulled into our driveway, the house I thought we shared, the life I thought was real, something had shifted inside me. I was done crying, done being the victim, done being the idiot who believed every lie. Now I was angry, that cold, clear, focused kind of anger that makes you dangerous. That night, while David was at his hotel in Portland, actually at Maple Avenue, tucking Emma and Jake into bed, I watched the lottery drawing on TV, not really paying attention. I never expected to win. Nobody ever expects to win. But then the numbers started coming up, and they matched David's ticket. Every single number. I sat there on our couch, staring at the TV screen as the reality slowly sank in. My husband, the man who'd been lying to me for 10 years, who'd stolen my money to fund his secret family, had just won $50 million, and I knew exactly what he'd do with it. He'd leave me, finally. He'd take that money, divorce me quietly with some tiny settlement, and go live his real life with his real family. He'd probably act like the good guy, make sure I got taken care of, while he ran off into the sunset with $50 million and the family he actually wanted. Unless I stopped him. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my laptop, researching lottery law until the sun came up, and what I found made my heart race. In our state, lottery winnings during a marriage are considered marital property, even if only one spouse buys the ticket. Both spouses have a legal claim, unless there's a separation agreement already in place, or the ticket was bought with documented separate funds. David had bought that ticket with our joint credit card. I had the statement. I had proof. Better yet, there was a 7-day window to claim any prize over $1 million. The winner had to appear in person at the state lottery office with the physical ticket and valid ID. David had no idea he'd won yet. He never checked the tickets until Sunday night, and he was still at his other house. The ticket was in his desk drawer at our house. I had until Monday morning, and I had a plan. Sunday afternoon, I told David I was going to visit my sister in Connecticut for the day. He barely looked up from his phone. "Sure, babe, drive safe. I'll probably just watch the game." He was texting Madison, planning what to make for dinner at their house later. I drove straight to a lawyer's office, someone who specialized in divorce and asset protection. I'd called ahead, told her it was an emergency. I showed her everything: the photos of his messages with Madison, the pictures of his second family, the bank statements showing years of money being funneled to that other household, the credit card statement showing he'd bought the lottery ticket with our joint account. And I told her about the $50 million. She didn't even look surprised. "I've seen worse," she said. "Let's make sure he doesn't get away with this." Here's what we did. First, she filed an emergency separation petition, citing adultery and financial fraud. It wouldn't finalize a divorce yet, but it would legally separate our assets as of that moment. Second, she filed a formal complaint with our bank, documenting the unauthorized transfers to his second household, not to press charges yet, just to create an official paper trail. Third, and this was the brilliant part, she explained that I could claim the lottery winnings as marital property before he even knew he'd won. Because the ticket was purchased during our marriage with marital funds, I had every legal right to those winnings. All I needed was the physical ticket. That night, I waited until David fell asleep in our bed. Then I went to his desk. I'd known the password to his locked drawer for years. It was his mom's birthday, same password he used for everything. Inside was the lottery ticket, tucked in an envelope with the winning numbers circled in red pen. My hands were shaking as I took photos from every angle. Then I carefully put it back exactly where I'd found it. Monday morning, 8 a.m., I was waiting outside the state lottery office when they unlocked the doors. I had printed photos of the ticket, the credit card statement showing the purchase, our marriage license, and the emergency separation petition my lawyer had filed. The claims officer looked at everything carefully. She called her supervisor. They both studied the documents. "This is unusual," the supervisor said, "but it's legal. The ticket was purchased with marital funds during an active marriage. You have equal claim to these winnings." "I want it in my name only," I said. "The separation agreement gives me that right." She nodded slowly. "We'll need to verify everything, but yes, based on these documents, we can process this claim in your name." 45 minutes later, I walked out of that office with a check for $50 million. Well, technically, it would be direct deposited within 72 hours into a new bank account that only I had access to, but still, I'd done it. I sat in my car in the parking lot and just breathed. For the first time in 3 weeks, since finding that receipt in David's pocket, I felt like I could actually breathe. David found out on Wednesday. He'd checked the lottery numbers Sunday night, realized he'd won, and spent 3 days planning his grand exit, his big moment, his perfect escape. Wednesday morning, he told me he had a quick work meeting and would be back by lunch. He drove straight to the lottery office, ticket in hand, ready to claim his $50 million and his freedom from me. They told him the prize had already been claimed by his wife, legally, 3 days ago. I was at home when he called. I saw his name on my phone screen and almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear this. "Sarah!" He was screaming, actually screaming in a way I'd never heard in 12 years. "What did you do? That was my ticket. You stole from me. I'll sue you. I'll what, David?" My voice was calm, cold. I'd been practicing this. "Sue me for taking half of what was legally mine? The ticket you bought with our joint credit card. Go ahead, take me to court. I'd love to explain to a judge about the other family you've been funding with my money for the last 10 years. Silence. Beautiful, perfect silence. Madison knows, by the way, I sent her copies of all our financial records. She knows you were using my money to pay for her house, her kids' school, her whole life. She knows you're not the successful architect you pretended to be. You're just a liar who stole from his wife to impress his girlfriend. I heard him trying to speak, but I wasn't done. Here's how this works now. You sign the divorce papers my lawyer sends you. You agree to the settlement, which includes you getting exactly $0 from the lottery money, and in exchange, I won't press criminal charges for fraud and bigamy. You can't prove. I have everything, David. Photos, bank statements, messages, witnesses. I could bury you, but I'm giving you a choice. Sign the papers and walk away, or fight me and lose everything, including your freedom. I hung up. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. David signed every paper without fighting. What choice did he have? He got nothing from the lottery. He got to keep his architecture business, which turns out wasn't doing nearly as well as he'd claimed. Turns out a lot of those business trips weren't even real. Madison left him too. Once she realized there was no money and he'd been lying to her about everything too. Plus, she was facing questions about whether she knew he was married, which could have made her complicit in fraud. Last I heard, David's living in a one-bedroom apartment, paying child support for Emma and Jake, and trying to rebuild his reputation after word spread about his double life. As for me, I moved to a small coastal town I'd always dreamed about. I bought a house right on the beach, where I can watch the sunrise every morning. I started a nonprofit that helps women escape financial abuse, because I realized how many people are trapped like I was, not knowing they have options, not knowing they have rights. And yeah, I still buy a lottery ticket every Friday, old habits. But now when I pick my numbers, I'm not hoping to get lucky. I already got my lucky break. For 10 years, David split his time between two families. He split his love, his money, his entire life. He thought he could keep both worlds spinning forever, like some kind of circus act. In the end, the only thing I split was our future. He chose lies. I chose freedom. And unlike him, I actually won. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button. I share real stories of revenge, justice, and people who refused to be victims. New video every week. See you in the next one.